G'day and welcome back. We are at part 6 of the beginner series. This video is going to be all about image textures, adding image textures to your models. So we're going to be demonstrating it on the table and making our table look like wood. And then we'll also be talking about bump mapping. So making, using a normal map, we'll get to that, to create like a realistic sort of bumpy look, in this case for the wood grain. So you can use this for a bunch of stuff. Image textures are used so much throughout 3D, the 3D world. So this will be a really important one. All right, so this is where we left off at the end of the last video. We got our mug here, and I mentioned that your homework was to model a plate based on what we learned on this. So I'm hoping that you tried it. If you didn't, pause this video right now. Shame on you for starting the next video without giving it a shot. Give it a shot by yourself, and then I'll show you very quickly now how we're going to do it. If you followed this one, it should be pretty easy to guess. But basically, to make a plate is round. So I'm actually going to start with a circle like this. And by the way, I didn't actually mention this before, but the objects will appear wherever your 3D cursor is. So if your cursor is over here, you add it, it's now going to appear over there, right? So if I want my, oh, where did my circle go? I had a circle. Oh, come on now. Don't do this. There it is. I'll hide these, delete that. Okay, so if I wanted my plate to appear underneath my donut, you know, I could position this manually, or an easier way, because it's slightly off, I can hit Shift S and then hit cursor to selected, and that'll sort of snap it there. So anyways, so I'm going to start with a circle. And then in the toolbar options here, I'm going to set the fill type to Ngon, which just means that it's now going to actually create a face right there, like that. So it's now actually a solid object. I don't expect you to have known how to do that there was such a thing as changing the face. We haven't used circles yet, but I'm just showing you how I do it. Anyway, so I'm placing it down there, and now I'm just going to extrude this outwards. So I'm going to extrude, hit escape, and then I'm going to scale this like that. All right, and that is basically a plate. Now you can see though that we've got, like if I pull this up, we've got this top plane. Okay, so it's actually connecting the top part of it, which I don't want. So I'm going to hit X, and then just like we did in the past one, I'm going to delete the face. And there we go, got myself a plate. If I want to smooth it out, make it look a little bit tidier, I could add a subsurf modifier. So I'll do that. Increase that. We got that same problem that we encountered over here with our mug. So the way to fix this, whoops, is right under here. I'm just going to hit I to inset it, and now that distortion kind of artifact thing is now underneath, so you can't, because it's flat, you can't see it anymore. And then now to give some thickness to the plate, I'm just going to use a solidify modifier. Now, again, you don't have to have done yours exactly like this. And in fact, I'm expecting that probably 90% of you did not create your plate like this at all. But this is, I mean, I say this to prove that, there's so many different ways that you can make an object. Like you could have started with a cylinder, then deleted it, pulled it out. You could have started making it bigger and then inset it to pull it down. And there's lots of different ways you can go about doing this stuff. And it's really just what works for you and whatever you're familiar with. I hope that dog starts barking. Stops barking. I think he's barking because I'm talking. Like I was like, all right, he stopped. I'll start the tutorial. And then I'm like, g'day. And he goes, "Rah, rah, rah." Anyway. Cool. So I'm putting a little loop cut here. I'm not telling you what I'm doing, but I'm putting a loop cut here just to fix, see that artifact on the edge there? Looks like this weird shading thing. So I'm just putting a loop cut there to tighten it up. Proximity loop. And there we go. Got ourselves one of those Corel plates, the ones that all of a sudden just took over the world. Everybody now has those smooth Corel plates because they're so light and lovely. Anyway, plate is done. And for the material on the cup, I told you that was homework as well. So that was, the shortcuts. Yeah, I shouldn't be doing so fast. I split the view here, and I'm going to the node editor. The shortcut for that was Shift F3 or Shift F5 to go back to the 3D view. So little tip there. So this was the node group I used. As I said, it's basically the exact same thing that I gave for the icing, but it's for the cup. Okay, it's the exact same setup, but I just changed the settings very slightly. I must have deleted my lamp. Let's bring that back. There we go. And I think I made the reflection a little bit sharper than the donut, obviously, because it's ceramic. But that's basically it. All right, so now we can, now that you've done that, again, you don't have to follow this exactly, okay? I want this to be sort of interactive. I want you to have to play around and look at the settings yourself and try and choose what's right. I hope this isn't a paint by numbers style tutorial. I hope you're feeling free to venture out and do what you want. All right, so let's talk about image textures. So you've got an object, you know that you want it to have an image texture. It's, you obviously can't cut it with just basic colors, like, you're making the wood look brown or like this object look brown or something. You need an image texture. All right, so there's a number of ways of going about doing this. The method that I think a lot of beginners choose is they go to Google and they go like wood texture and they type this in, they go to the images and then they use these. Now, you can do this, sure. But the problem with a lot of these images here is that they're not designed for 3D usage. And by that, I mean that they have like shadows, they've got specular highlights. So a lot of these are designed for like websites, and they're not really that, like these sorts of textures, almost every single texture here would be awful for 3D. Some are better than others, but most of them would be terrible. And that's because what CG artists need is a completely flat, no reflection, no shadows, and it needs to look razor sharp. So there's other websites, like you could use CG Textures. Now I used CG Textures for several years, but I personally found after a while that their quality was lacking. And also it's missing something else, which we'll get to in a moment. So instead, I actually created my own website, my own texture website, and we've been working on it now for about 2 or 3 years. So we have photographers and we have really strict standards, and every texture, every photograph they take has to be razor sharp. There can be no shadows, there can be no highlights, and I'm the ultimate stickler for strict. I'm like, no, not that one, not that one. So anyway, so this is our website. It's called Poliigon, Poliigon. And we have lots of textures. So if you go here, just click Explore Library first, and you can see all the different types of textures that we have here. So the one that we're looking for obviously is wood. So let's go ahead and click on wood. Now, one thing you can do on Poliigon, which I made sure of because it's something that I really wanted when I myself was browsing textures, is a way to restrict the so in the wood category you can choose like floor, for example, and just show wood that also matches floor. Do you know what I mean? Or you could also look at I just want clean ones, like no dirty wood. Okay, so that one's only got one. So it'll only show you stuff that matches a specific tag. So anyway, so what I actually want, because I couldn't see it in that list there, but I'm going to type in interior. So wood and interior. So it's just going to show me wood that is suitable for interior. So looking through this, you can click on any one you actually want. It's totally up to you. To download textures, you'll need a trial license. But yeah, it's totally free. You could sign up for that. And go for it. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and download, which one will I like? Let me have a look here. That one looks pretty good, 26. So I'm just trying to think, I want my table to look like a wooden table, So it's maybe this will make it look like a floor, like these planks, because that's how, wooden floors are made. They got planks, whereas tables generally don't have a cut in the middle of it. So I might go with something like this, wood fine 26. That looks pretty nice to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And now this, I'll just show you this. So this is a standard image texture here, and this is what most texturing websites would have. But as well as that, we've also provided, I'm doing a bit of a spiel for Poliigon. I'm selling it, obviously, but I am sort of, I want to explain why we're about to use this. So we have the different maps that 3D artists need to create the specific material that you want. So, most texture websites would just give you this, and then you have to use other software like Crazy Bump or Knald to actually convert it into the different types of texture you need to make a realistic material. I know that won't make sense yet, but when you get to it, you'll be like, oh, right, so I need these specific things. So the two texture types we're going to use for this tutorial, to keep it sort of simple, is this one here, and then also this normal map. So normal map is used specifically for bump mapping. So it creates the raised tiny surface across the bump. So it's very, very, very important. So I'm going to just download this diffuse one right here. I'll download it at 3K. But yeah, you can download it at 1 or whatever if that's all you've got. And I'll download the normal map at 3K as well. So downloading both of those right now. Let's show why this next one. Oh, there we go. So now that we have downloaded, let's open up Blender and let's just start to assemble the very basic material. So our wood material has the pretty similar properties to the cup and the donut icing. Like, it's got a diffuse, but it's also a little bit shiny. So that's what I mean by it looking the same. So we're going to split the view here, and I'm going to make this a node editor right here. And down here, if you don't already have a new material over there, if you just click new, it's the same thing. You've just added it there as well. So I will just create a space here. I'll add in a mix shader. And right here next to it, I'll add in the gloss, combine the two together. And let's have a look at how this is looking right now. Okay, so we got a little bit of a shiny looking table. Okay, cool. So, I got like, you know that thing like when you stand up too fast and you get like little specks sort of floating around? I wasn't sure if it was actually the noise in the render as it was doing this, or if it was actually something in my field of vision. I'm like, ooh. Anyway, so how do we add an image texture? Well, looking at our node shader here, essentially the color of our table now is powered entirely by this right here. So if I wanted the table blue, I put it there, you know, red, whatever. I could make that any color. So if I can replace that color with an image slotted in here, then it will appear on our table there. So what we need to do to add an image into this node editor here is hit Shift A, which you'll remember is the shortcut for adding anything in Blender, and then go to Texture, and then hit Image Texture. And there we go. So here I'm going to go and click Open. Oh my goodness. Okay, great. All right, so here's my image, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit Open. Oh yeah, that view up there is thumbnail view. I just prefer looking at it when I'm trying to find my image. So the color, I'm just going to load this one in by hitting Open. And now, if I plug this into the diffuse, the image will be applied to the plane. But wait, what is going on? I don't see any wood. So what is actually happening? So by default, Blender will be looking for a UV map. A what? A UV map. UV maps. So essentially, to apply a texture to an object in 3D, you need to tell the software where the image texture should be mapped to, because really you are dealing with three-dimensional objects like this, and you're taking a two-dimensional map and you're trying to put them together. So how would it know which part of the wood should put on the outside versus the one on the inside, or etc.? Like, it can't just automatically wrap around it. I mean, there's ways of, cheating like that, but generally you do UV unwrapping. So UV unwrapping means to essentially like imagine your object and you're flattening it okay, so imagine your object is made of paper and you want to cut it so that you can make the paper flat again. That's what creating a UV map is all about, really. So as an example, like for this plane here, it's the easiest UV unwrapping in the world because it's already flat. So it's the simplest type. So to UV unwrap in Blender, I'm going to split the view just like this. And I did that just by moving the mouse to the bottom left and just dragging up. I'll collapse it down again. And then I'm going to change the view to UV Image Editor. And when you're in here, by default, it'll load in your render result, which is like the last render you've done, because it's both used for displaying the render, but also for UV unwrapping. And I'm just going to hit that little X there. Okay, so now we're just looking at a grid floor here. So if I take my my plane here, if I go into edit mode, and then I hit U, this will bring up the UV unwrapping menu. So if I hit unwrap, like that, it has now automatically unwrapped this plane and cast it onto a 2D space. So it's taking this what technically is, well, it's already a 2D shape because it's a flat plane, but it's now flattening it, and it's transferring that information to 2D. So now if I went back into render mode, you can see that the wood is now appearing on it right there. So that's UV unwrapping, okay? Now, that was because this is a plane, it's very hard to sort of imagine this. So what I'll do is just very quickly, I'll show you how to UV unwrap a cube. And that analogy about it being made of paper won't sound so crackpot. So let me first of all just get a drink here. I do want to try and keep these tutorials short, because I know people like short stuff, but but I also want to make sure we cover everything. And like, if I just did a plane, that wouldn't really help people when you have like a more complex object. So I'll show you. This is a lot harder to, let's use the same material. This one right here. Okay, so this is a lot harder to make flat because it's a cube. So how do you make it flat? So if you just went here and you did what I just did before, and I hit U and then I clicked unwrap, this wouldn't really work. I mean, well, technically it would. It would just make each one of those planes there a flat thing, like an individual, like it would be repeating the same texture all around. But the proper way to do it would be to, like if it was made of paper, you telling it where you're going to put the scissors, where you're going to do the cuts in order to unfold the mesh to make it flat. So the way I do that is I would go to edge select mode here. This is one of those instances where you use edge select mode. And I would select the edges that I want to make cuts. And when I've got the edges, if I hit Control E, then I can choose to make it a seam. So this is a term specifically used for UV unwrapping. So I'll hit that. So I'm going to make a cut there. Now if I did this, you would see it's starting to look weird here. This is very common, like UV unwrapping. You see all sorts of weird looking shapes. So that means it hasn't properly done it yet, because you can see it's all skewed. And then I might do one here and another one here. So let's do, whoops, Control E, mark seam. Let's try it again. Okay, we're getting there. It's starting to unfold, but you can see these aren't like proper squares yet. They're still a little bit skewed. And then I might do another one finally right there and right there. So let's do that, mark seam, hit U, and then unwrap. Now you can see it's perfectly flattened. So this is exactly, a die is 6 sides, and you can see it. There are 6 sides to our UV thing there. So that is how you would UV unwrap. I mean, can't really see it, but that's how you would UV unwrap a cube, okay, just as an example. Now, UV unwrapping, it's a very challenging topic, and if you are UV unwrapping something more complex like a character, it gets very time consuming, I guess. But anyways, I wanted to just include that cube there. It'll be something that you'll get better at over time. But just remember that, imagine it's made of paper and you're cutting it with a pair of scissors and you're choosing how to flatten it out on a flat plane there. And I think you'll be fine. All right, cool. So we have UV unwrapped it. We now have a wood. I set this to. I'm just changing the world. We'll get to the lighting in a future video, but I just wanted to brighten it. What I'll do, I'll increase the brightness of my lamp here just so that we can see it a little bit better. A little bit more. All right, there we go. Okay, so we got our wood. But look at this. Look at our wood. So our wood, it's got the reflection, but you can see that it looks almost like you have, gotten to a photo printer and you've printed that wooden texture on a piece of that kind of matte photo paper, and now you've got it stuck here. And the reason for that is that there's no bump mapping. So a real surface has tiny little bumps across it. You run your hand along a wooden surface, those are the tiny little bumps, and they will displace that reflection. You'll see little bumps and grooves, and there'll be parts of it that'll affect how much reflection it is, and where there's shadow and things like that. So thankfully we don't have to model that by hand. Doing a little edge loop for each one of these little grains there would be ridiculous. So thankfully, technology that I think was invented by Pixar allows us to use the data from images to fake that bump mapping. So how do we do it? Well, that's why we downloaded this purple texture here. So this purple image texture, what it does is It's a special type of map which is only used by 3D software, and it tells you where the raised parts are and where the low parts are. And this thing here was created based off this image. So we used extra software like Nald or any other different plugins and things like that to create this. And we told it where to put the bumps and things like that. So it's like it's been pre-made to define where all the bumps are. So that's essentially what a normal map is. Just remember it as the purple one. Through the power of purple, it works. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to duplicate this node, this image texture node, and I'm going to hit open. That normal map right there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit open. Right, now, where do you plug the normal map? Well, you might notice we have normal written there. So normal is it is the one that we plug it into. But the term normal generally just means it's related to the surface and the direction that the face is pointing up or down, things like that. So normal is often used a lot in like the node editor, like you've got vectors and all sorts of different things related to normals. It's not just about the bump, but it is definitely used for bump. So anyway, so I've plugged the image texture into these normal inputs right here. And now let's have a look at how this looks. All right, now we can see we've got some bump on our table now, which looks pretty cool, but the reflection is very odd. So what is going on? If we remember what the original one looks like, the light, like the reflection should be right here, right in front of that donut. But when we plug this thing in, it all skews off to the side and we've got all sorts of weirdness going on. Doesn't look right. The reason for that is that we need to tell Blender that this is a normal map. You shouldn't treat it like a standard color texture. We need to treat it like a normal map. So to do that, you need to convert it. So between here and there, right here, I'm going to add in another node, and that is Shift A. Underneath Vector, click Normal Map. Very simple node. All you do, plug it in like that, and that's done. Okay? Now, one other final thing to mention, the reflection's still not correct. Look, see, the reflection should be here, but it's now off to the side. So we've got another problem. Like, what's going on? Well, that's because this is a normal map, we also need to remind and tell Blender, don't look at the color information, just like don't treat it like a standard color texture, even though you're feeding it through here. Treat it like it is a like a special type of texture, which you're only going to be reading specific things about it. This is a very horrible explanation. Point being, you need to set it from color to non-color data. And now that we've done that, look at that. Look at our table. It is looking fine. So I might turn down my roughness so we can see it a little bit better. Well, look at that. Our table is looking fantastic. Very, very realistic. Now you could actually go further if you wanted to. You could download the gloss map, which would be used for, as an example, let me put this to the side. I'm going to show you a quick way of, where is my Blender? Where's actual Blender? Oh, okay. All right, hang on. Put that to the side. Okay, yeah, so here's a quick way. You can actually drag images from another window into Blender without having to open it up in here, for example. So as an example, if I just take this and I drag it from Chrome over to Blender, now I've got that. So what you can actually do, like this is the gloss map. So gloss map is used for the roughness of the material, for the gloss, okay? So if I put that in there, it's now actually controlling how glossy this surface should actually be. And I'll set that to non-color data as well. And now it's like really diffused in matte. So you generally, when you're dealing with things like the roughness, also the reflection map and things like that, you generally put in like a color ramp and you tweak it to whatever it is that you want. Now this is really advanced stuff, so it's why I didn't really want to include this. I'm only just throwing this in now as an extra thing. I don't really expect you to follow along. But essentially this will mean that parts of it will have a sharper reflection and parts of it will have a duller reflection. So it's kind of like giving extra detail to the material. And then if you wanted to, you could also download the reflection map, and then the reflection map would go in here. So you would take that, drag that over to Blender, and then put this into the factor input and set this to non-color data. And then that would define like which parts of it are shiny and then which parts of it are diffuse. So it's using that like a mask. So it's a black and white image and it's used as a mask. This is unnecessary though. For something like this, we're not going for photorealism or anything anyway. It's kind of overkill. So we don't really need it. So I'm just going to stick with these two right here. And I'll make the roughness whatever I want. And I don't want that much reflection either. So let's just dull that down a bit. And there we go. So that was the image texture. Hope you enjoyed it. I didn't include a silly thing for the end. Hey, that's a shame. What silly thing could I actually do? Let me think. Hey, I know. I'll make our icing here look like camouflage. Hey, so I'll go to Polygon and let me close this. Nope, not you. We have some camo. Let me just type in here. Camo. So we've got some like seamless camouflage tiles here. So I'm going to apply this like military texture to our icing there. So I'll download this and I'll show you very quickly how you can apply it. Which one do I want? Diffuse. Let's say 1K. The size of it when you get to this sort of scale doesn't really matter, whether it's 3K, 1K, or whatever. All right, so I've got the icing, and I'll drag this over. And what I'll do is I'm just going to plug this directly and replace the pinkness of our text there. Now, just like before, it hasn't mapped it properly, but I'm going to cheat. Instead of doing the UV unwrapping, I'm going to use a different part of the texture. So this is a texture coordinate node, and it is for, you can tell Blender to, instead of using the UV, so this is what it's using by default right now, even though it's not connected. If I set it to generated, you can see that it's now just very, like you can see like the edges here are like stretched, so it's not perfect. You could maybe use like object and then set this to box, and then that way it'll kind of like tile the edges a little bit as well. But that's basically it. So we just made it look like a little camouflage donut there. So weird little thing. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next part. Bye.